So welcome to the sixth unit of the Teacher Training Toolkit Multilingual Resources for primary schools in the Gambia. Here what I'm going to do is I'm purely going to go over examples of multilingual resources, which really strictly speaking, insofar as we're focusing on written resources, some of you might actually be calling them teaching aids. So let us start. So here's some advice we've given teachers. The first one is know your students' home languages. One way to do this is, for example, by asking, let's say at the start of the year, your students to draw a language map, and you can actually display this language map on these language maps on the wall. Some of the teachers we've worked with have reported that they found this useful because it allowed them to identify languages that they didn't know existed in their learners' linguistic repertoire. The second point here is about, even if you as a teacher don't know some of the languages spoken by your learners, don't let it mean that you won't encourage your students to use them. Obviously, I'm aware that there is a language of instruction policy, but here I can imagine that in some cases you for a range of reasons might want to encourage students to use their languages. So even if the students you don't know their language, don't let that get in the way of you encouraging them to speak them or use them. Involve students, parents and community members. That might be useful, for example, if you well, again, particularly if you're dealing with languages you don't know and where you're writing them the way they sound, you might check the spelling with some community members, for example, or you might ask for certain vocabulary. If your learners don't know, you might ask their parents how to say I if you're doing body parts in let's say Serahule or uh, and 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 contact us if you need help with translating certain words if you're really struggling. I've got further information regarding this at the end of the presentation. So let's go over some examples here. I'm not going to go over what language maps are. You've done your language map. For each suggested multilingual resource, though, I've tried to single out why it might be useful. Of course, there might be other reasons, but here I'm putting, this might help you better engage with students and their parents by understanding learners linguistic background better. Glossaries here, by the way, you've got at the bottom here some guidelines on how to create a large-scale multilingual glossary. So if you're interested, you might want to take a look at this. But you might find, in relation to topics your learners find challenging, you might find it useful to develop a glossary. Again, once your glossary is developed, you don't need to develop it again. So here you can see that the benefits might be that they will learn better in their core subjects. Classroom decorations. I mean, this is by no means exhaustive, but you could have display posters, signs, labels in different languages spoken by your students. That could be useful in terms of showing that the school values linguistic and cultural diversity. Posters, again, posters can easily include more than one language. And I've certainly seen this done in primary schools in the UK, for example. And it's also easy to include less widely spoken languages by asking the students who speak these languages to tell you the words they know. And if they don't know, that's when you might turn to the parents or community members. So these posters could be your own, could actually be made created by your students. Now, I've got an important point. If you don't know how to write a language, make a point of writing it down using English or another language to decide its spelling, and then find out from someone who knows how to write the language, if possible. I mean, in some cases, it won't be possible. It might not actually be possible because the language might not be written. Uh, but what's important, and this is something that was brought to my attention when I went to one of the UK Literacy Association conferences, is that letting the students witness you when you correct the spelling, so not hiding the process of writing it the first time and then eventually correcting it. That's not something that needs to be hidden away. If anything, that's really something that students can learn from. But even if you don't get round to correcting your guest's spelling, as it were, uh, visibility is better than invisibility for the children. And I'll repeat that again. Visibility is better than invisibility, or than having, completely correct language. And in this case, the posters, could be useful in terms of improving students' awareness of spelling or vocabulary development. Hence, what I was saying about them witnessing you writing it down and then correcting it, and so on and so forth, is quite useful as well in terms of appreciating literacy, the development of Gambian languages. Gambian and other languages, because they will speak languages other than Gambian languages too. Here, I'm illustrating what I've just said. I've tried to render writing with mistakes. That's the heading of the slide here. I'm referring to something you might know here. The invented spelling approach is an approach to writing in the L1 that allows newly literate children, or adults for that matter, to use phonics skills to remember, that they remember, to write even if they make spelling mistakes. And what the research says is that eventually learners will self-correct, so long as they're exposed to correct written language, such as they would be exposed to in storybooks. So in short, there shouldn't be there shouldn't be any cause for concern. Now, if we take this invented spelling approach, it can be applied to multilingual learners who might be encouraged to do what we call transliteration, so namely writing their own language the way they sound, using an alphabet that they know. So again, even if it's not completely correct because you don't know the language, because you don't know at the time of writing what the spelling might be, visibility is better than invisibility. Multilingual labels for classroom items. Again, I mean, you could have labels in the classroom or beyond the classroom for that matter. But what this can help students with is to associate the object with the corresponding word in their language. So labels in a variety of languages can be developed for your classroom, but other parts of the school too, as I've just mentioned, the head teacher's office, the garden, the selling area where people might be buying food, the playground, the assembly hall, etc., etc. Changing the linguistic landscape of your school or your classroom in that way can be seen to send a message of inclusion, and that can be quite useful in terms of engaging parents. So again, it expresses that the school values national and other languages as much as English in education. Flashcards. So I've got an example here of flashcards in Afrikaans and English. So you can have the picture and the words written in students' home languages. Like labels, again, it allows students to associate the object with the corresponding word, and I've got more flashcards here. So including more languages, so it includes Arabic, Chinese, Russian, and English. World map. So you could have a world map or a map of the countries of origin of the students, and you can label the map with the names of the languages spoken in these regions of the world. So that here, interestingly, could help them develop geographical knowledge and also cultural awareness. What you might, all you might need really is maybe is a map of the Gambia. So assuming all your children are from the Gambia and have never traveled elsewhere, that's what might happen. If you were teaching in Brikama, for example, you might want to point out that if your learners are from are Olof speakers, for example, you might want to mention that Fana Fana Olof or Kakao Olof, for example. So you might want to point out that it comes from the North Bank region, and then some might refer, some of your learners might refer to specific dialects of Jola they speak at home because their parents or grandparents speak it, etc., etc. So all you might need is actually a map of the Gambia. Multilingual world wall. This is, again, this is a hyperlink. It's in blue, so you can click it. You can find out more about this project of, focused on narratives and multilingual storytelling in early childhood education. So you could design a word wall with key vocabulary words or phrases in the languages of your students. And that can be, a useful reference for both yourselves as teachers, but also your students. And needless to say that this multilingual word wall might be related to the learning that takes place in the classroom at the time. So you might be focusing on the forms of weather, for example, and you might have lots of information and pictures, etc. You can see on the example here on your word wall, as well as words from all the different languages that your learners speak. Language of the week. You could potentially, it doesn't need to be a week, it could be a month, but you could choose a different language to highlight each week and then teach students simple greetings, phrases, or facts about that language and culture if applicable. What I'm putting here is that this could help develop linguistic and cultural awareness and maintain positive interethnic relations. What comes to my mind when I think about this is show and tell. A way of organizing this would be to ask speakers, learners who speak a language to come and talk about the language and maybe bring some cultural artifacts, so, and link to other aspects of the learning that you're focusing on that. So here I've just spoken about show and tell in relation to the language week, but it could be a freestanding item, cultural show and tell. And that that really encourages students to come and share aspects of their culture and their language with the class. They could they could bring a range of things, stories, songs, traditional items for their communities. They could teach the rest of the class. Here it's up to you to decide, but that can be incredibly useful in terms of boosting students' confidence by effectively inviting them to come and speak about something that they're the experts in. So something definitely worth considering. So I hope that you've seen that I've deviated a little bit, with a couple of resources. It wasn't strictly speaking about, teaching aids, which is what we want you to produce, but we're trying to give you ideas as well. So multilingual library corner. So the idea here is to develop a space in the classroom or the school library for books in different languages. So storybooks, picture books, and other reading materials that represent the student's linguistic background. Now, I'm aware that this is a challenge in the Gambia because there aren't really children's storybooks available There is the material that's been developed, the teaching material that's been developed, for example, to teach the national language literacy lessons. What that means is that some of you might actually want to explore the possibility of developing books, very simple books. And if you're interested, but by all means do be in touch. There are videos available online on how to do this. So you develop very simple books with your learners, and and that could be the start of your multilingual library corner, as well as the other resources that you'll have available to you through through curriculum or the ministry. What you can say as well, what you can use as well, is multilingual storytelling, which we've been talking about as part of this teacher training toolkit. You can, for example, use a child in your classroom to summarize a story that you've told and summarize it in their own language. And this, as you can imagine, can have a positive impact on literacy development. Now, as you can see on the right, there's a blog post by Sabine. So Sabine has worked quite a lot on developing multilingual libraries in the UK. So you might want to have a look at this blog. And if you've got questions specifically about multilingual libraries, she's definitely the person to speak to. So now we're moving on to multilingual display boards. They are about showcasing student work in various languages. So here it would depend on what you have been doing with the students. I like, for example, the example you've got on the right hand side. So you develop the labels, the main languages, and then you've got student work organized by language. So in addition to being visually interesting, I think it can support again the engagement with the different cultures and languages in your class. So something else worth exploring. I think multilingual calendars are a no-brainer. This is something that we do every day. Every day we do the dates, and maybe at the start of the year you might want to think about translating the days of the month and the year, the months, the days of the week, sorry, the months, etc. And then it doesn't mean that you need to do the date in all the languages, obviously spoken in your classroom every day, but it's displayed, it's there, so children are being reminded every day that their language matters. Now, guest speakers, again, I'm aware that this is slightly beyond what we will encourage you to do as part of the teacher training when we're asking you to develop your own resources. But this could be useful in terms of supporting your other attempts to make the languages more visible in the form of written teaching aids. So you can invite bilingual or multilingual parents or community members or language experts. For example, you might want to engage national language desk officers or other literacy experts whom you might know in your region, and they can come and speak to the class in their native language, or and explain give share information about a specific language. The reason why I'm mentioning this is that the success, and we've already alluded to this in another unit, but really the success of failure of attempts to integrate African languages in education largely depends on community support. So that these kinds of seemingly small events can really make a difference. So here, community support is really the focus. Another, and I'm thinking a little bit about multilingual calendars as well. Another way of very easily making the linguistic repertoires of your learners visible in the classroom is having the alphabets displayed in the classroom. So we've got, this is actually what, one of the resources that was developed by one of the 5 teachers who participated in developing the teacher training toolkit. Pardon me, Mr. Jallo. So do look at it if you're interested. So we've got, as it stands at the time of producing this video, we've got the 7 national languages and also the Gambian Sign Language, but we're also going to add Arabic and other languages as well. So display the alphabets. Very good here, obviously, in terms of developing literacy awareness. And my concluding remark here, and I'm going to keep it incredibly short, is be creative. I've just shared with you what some examples, but you might have far better, more engaging, more culturally relevant, etc. Suggestions. So do be creative. And I mean, this is our last session together before the conclusion, and I very much hope to be amazed by some of the resources that you'll develop. Thank you. I hope that you found those examples useful. Same as ever, don't be shy. Do share what you think in the tell us about it section, and have a look at the activity and the resources as well. Thank you very much, and I shall see you in the concluding unit.